Aston Villa take on Manchester City this weekend. So who better to speak to about what Villa should expect at the Etihad than David Mooney, who runs the award-winning Blue Moon podcast. It's great to have you on again, David.
Thanks for having me. And that award took me. I'm little bit nervous about the news about City recently because I saw the Premier League punishments if City are found guilty is that they could. It was any punishment the panel deems necessary, and I'm just worried they're going to take that award off me now. It took me 8 years to get that award. I'm not going to let go of it that easily.
8 years and clawing and scraping. You got there in the end, and then the bloody Premier League were going to take it.
Yeah.
But now, obviously, there has been that major news involving City today, and we will touch on that later. Well, we'll go a bit more in depth on that later. But first of all, we'll focus on Villa City this weekend. So David, what are you expecting from Aston Villa?
I'm expecting a bloody good game, to be honest with you. I wish he still had Steven Gerrard in charge. Basically, I think you've looked a lot more competent since you've made the change. And I didn't have a lot of kind of feelings towards Unai Emery when he was at Arsenal and kind of what he's done since. But I did think actually weirdly it was a bit of a risk to appoint him because I never kind of got the impression that he was the sort of manager that would get you out of trouble, if you know what I mean. I thought you were in trouble earlier in the season, but he's proved me wrong. He's been great, and he's I think the fact that you are, comfortably mid-table after a couple of months that he's been in charge now. I think it speaks wonders for the job that he was doing because I thought you were in real trouble earlier in this season. And it just doesn't look the way at all. I must confess, I've not seen a lot of you this season in the kind of other than the game that you played against City. But from from just looking at the results and from what I've seen from highlights and stuff on Match of the Day and whatnot, you seem to be a lot more solid defensively, and you seem to be kind of have a bit more of a plan than you used to have, and that kind of concerns me, especially with the way City are playing at the moment.
Yeah, I think Villa for sure. In the Gerrard era, it was like that meme in The Simpsons where the defenders just pass it back and forth to each other over and over again, and then Springfield riots. And believe me, I nearly rioted myself watching Villa play under Gerrard. And Unai Emery has been a complete breath of fresh air. And there is, as you say, a plan. It feels like every game he has an idea and a plan. And for most part, it's worked. But there's been one or two occasions in home games where we've been caught on the counter attack. So that's something that he'll definitely want to work on. But away from home is where I find Villa quite intriguing because we've been playing very well away. Beat Southampton 1-0, but also beat Tottenham 2-0 on the first day of the year.
Tough place to go, that.
Yeah, as Man City, for some reason, keep finding. You beat everyone except them. We won 2-0 there, and we're just very comfortable defensively. And I think that as a tactician, Unai Emery, maybe his style will really suit away games, and that's why I'm sort of quite intrigued by the City game, because normally I'm very, I've been on your podcast, and every time I've done a prediction, I've always referred back to, nightmares of the past. But I'm slightly interested to see this weekend, given City's current form and Villa's away form.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same, except not really that. I'm not finding it interesting. I'm finding it a little bit more, a little bit scary in many senses because City are just not in good form right now. The number of games where they've played, and you go, it's just a bit boring. They should be good enough to be passing the ball around and creating opportunities for the likes of Haaland and Alvarez. But the number of times where City have just had the ball in threatening positions in the final third, off the top of my head, I'm really struggling to pick them out. Take the game at weekend against Spurs, and there's the whole curse of Spurs away and all that sort of stuff for City, but the opening 20 minutes aside, I'm not even sure it was that long, maybe opening 15 minutes. So up until Kane scored, City were on top until they gifted Harry Kane the goal. And then after that, you just thought, well, this is this game done. They're just not. They're not in a position to be able to create something worthwhile. And then the best chance they had, Mahrez hit the underside of the bar from a cross. A cross was played into the box. It was flicked on by one of the defenders, landed to him at the back post. He took a bit of a snapshot and hit the bar. And that was about the best they could muster.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of problems with City this season. Not least they haven't got any fullbacks, but and then they didn't have any left backs, and the only player that could really play left back they let go in January because he was just not. Cancelo was. Guardiola has this thing where he's kind of like no bad faces, and if you're not kind of fighting for the group and you're not part of the group, then he doesn't really want you there, whether they need you there or not. Yeah. And it's why City's attitude for transfers has always been: if you want to leave, then you can go. There's no, we're not going to stand in your way, but you just got to bring us an offer that we deem acceptable. And Cancelo was exactly the same as that. It was he wanted to leave. He brought an offer that City deemed acceptable, a loan for the first for the next half of the season, and then with an option to buy from Bayern Munich, and they were like, yeah, okay, fine, you want to leave, off you go. We'd rather have people here who want to be here. The problem is it leaves City with one senior fullback in Kyle Walker, one centre half who has been playing pretty well at left back in Nathan Ake, and then after that you've got Rico Lewis, who's a youngster that's coming through at the moment and has been good, but looked 18 in the last few games and has looked kind of like he's still learning on the job, which he is. And kind of when you're in the situation that City are in at the moment and you're in a bit of a funk and you're kind of trying to kind of work your way out of it, the last thing you really want to do is get rid of any assets that might help you get out of it. And I mean, Cancelo, in fairness, has not had a good season and is not one of the players that I would expect to suddenly like be part of a team that put a winning run of 14 games together. But I mean, just in terms of personnel, it feels like City are a bit lopsided at the minute. They've got no fullbacks, they've got 5 centre halves. And Erling Haaland is scoring goals, but City's system is not working in the same way as it has done in previous seasons. So he's in many ways he's scoring goals in spite of the system rather than because of it. And City haven't quite worked out how to kind of make the system work alongside him right now. So when I guess kind of, notwithstanding any punishments from the Premier League for future seasons, I guess the kind of the plan is for the remainder of this season, work out what the hell to do with this setup and work out a way to integrate Haaland into the team to get the best out of him and the other players as well. Because at the minute they're only really getting the best out of him in moments rather than in getting kind of whole performances.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting sort of 2 points made there, the fullback situation where you look at the Zinchenko sale to Arsenal, and that was a player at the time that I've always really rated him just for his versatility. Amazingly, Zinchenko's sale could end up being such a bonus for Arsenal, and then you say, for City themselves, you're quite lopsided. I wonder if that actually could end up being a title-defining move.
Yeah,
really.
it could be, but again, like he was one of those players he wanted to leave. There was no guarantee that he would play football at City. I mean, and in fact, the criticism that I have of City from that sale is not selling Zinchenko. It's not getting a left back in. They've needed a left back now since about 2016, and they've still not signed one. I mean, they signed Benjamin Mendy, who we all know the story around Benjamin Mendy currently. And other than that, they have not signed a single left back. So you kind of go in, if your situation demands that you need a left back, and they have done that, they've needed one for years on end, then like maybe go out and make it a priority. Maybe you should be looking at various different options to go out and get that sorted. They signed Sergio Gomez last summer, who from Anderlecht, who is an attacking midfielder turned left back, very much in the Zinchenko mold. Right. And he's come in for 2 or 3 games this season and looked completely out of his depth. And it's like, well, of course he has, because he's an attacking midfielder playing at left back. It's just. I mean, I feel like I'm banging my head on a brick wall here, like just trying to get the message through to the club that actually, maybe you should sort this out. And the irony, of course, now is that if City are found guilty by the Premier League of these breaches and a transfer embargo is imposed upon them, it could be another 3 years before we see a left back at the club.
Yeah, we'll see how that goes. I mean, actually, something Jamie Carragher said after and I assume most City fans are aware of it, is after the Tottenham game that he mentioned that he thinks Erling Haaland perhaps picked the wrong club. Um, you know, it's debatable claim, but how do you react to that?
Yeah, I just think it's I don't want to swear, but I just think it's rubbish.
Right.
Because nobody expected Erling Haaland to walk into this City team and things to be perfect, because the whole problem, and without kind of being all woe is me, because I accept it's like first world problems to have. But the
Yeah.
whole problem was, for the last 2 years, City have played without a de facto striker. They had Jesus, who, has done well for Arsenal. But I'm again seeing Arsenal fans now. I mean, he's been injured the last few months, but like, I've seen Arsenal fans before his injury talking with the very same criticisms that City had of him, which was
Right.
that, he works hard for the team, just maybe should score a bit more than he does for a centre
Yeah.
forward. And yeah, it's fine. That's how at City he ended up moving out to the wing and being a wide player, because it was a case of he ain't scoring enough to be the centre forward. So we need to find a system that creates goals from the rest of the team. And that system was the false nine setup that they used for the last 2 years, where they had a year where Aguero was pretty much injured throughout, and then a year where they didn't have a striker as such. And yeah, it was an ingenious solution to the problem that City had there, but their way of doing it was to control games to within an inch of their life. They would
Yeah.
they would pass and pass and pass, and Guardiola kept talking about having a game where he needed 1,000,000,000 passes, and like just constantly sapping the opposition of any sort of control in the game, forcing them back and back and back, and eventually you'll get your chance to score. And I get it from neutrals' point of view. The number of times where neutrals would say City were quite boring to watch, and I get it, because what City did was they controlled the ball. They took more possession than they used to have previously. They already had a lot of possession previously, but you'd be looking at games most week where City would be looking at like 80% possession, and they'd knock it around, knock it around, knock it around. Eventually, work an opening, and somebody would score. And that control is what they still want to do. They still want to try and play that way, but now they've taken a man out of the middle and put in a centre forward, and suddenly they have one fewer players in the centre of the pitch to try and control a game. And opposition, and I think Villa did it at Villa Park. I think Newcastle did it at St James's Park pretty well. And then in the last few weeks, I mean, Southampton did it at St Mary's, United did it at Old Trafford, Spurs did it very well in the game on the weekend. They looked at City and went, "There's space in the middle, so let's if we put more players in the middle, and maybe we don't sit back like we used to do and try and soak up City's pressure. Maybe we try and put them under pressure in these areas. Then City don't have control of this game. And yeah, they've got excellent players, but City don't like basketball games. They don't like you
No.
attack, we attack, you attack, we attack, because they're
Yeah.
vulnerable to that." And that's been the issue in the last few weeks. City have ended up having more basketball games than not. And you kind of fold that into the secondary issue. The City just aren't creating decent chances at the moment. So the sort of you attack, we attack becomes, okay, you have a really, really good chance on the counter attack, and then we keep the ball for 10 minutes and try and work an opening that ends up breaking down, and then you counter attack again. And that just, it's left City really, really vulnerable. And I'm not quite sure, kind of like the answer is there in the setup. There must be a way to have Erling Haaland or Julian Alvarez, a striker, someone in that centre forward role, without having them to come in and be a false nine, and also have the control in the middle. And just Guardiola's not quite figured that out yet. And in the last few weeks, he's been trying to figure it out in a team that's just been in a bit of a bad mood and a bit of a funk as well. And it's just kind of all spiraled in the last kind of 6 weeks or so, where it's felt like the season has unraveled a bit. I mean, it's not. They're currently still sitting in second, and they'll do all right. But it's just like, yeah.
I am still expecting. I've just been expecting City to go on one of their sort of mad sort of 15-game winning streaks at some point.
It won't. I don't think it'll happen this season.
Right.
I think the issues. City's season feels very much like the 1920 season when Liverpool won the title, where like City are still a good team. They're a good team that will win most weeks, but they're playing at probably 98% capacity instead of 100% capacity. And that little 2% drop off, what it does is it means that every now and then, a team that they should beat in a game that they should win, they turn up and they just kind of they stink the place out for an hour, or they stink the place out for 90 minutes, and they maybe get a draw, or they maybe lose the game.
Mm.
And you think back to that 1920 season, we kept saying like City were the top scorers that season. They had the most clean sheets, and yet they were still 18 points off Liverpool at the top of the table.
Crazy.
So
Yeah, 18.
There was clearly something not there. And what it boiled down to was they would batter Watford 8-0, and that would be great. But then they lose 2-0 to Wolves the next week, and so like it doesn't really like that. There was an issue that had not been solved, and I'm getting the same feeling from this season. So the people that like I was watching the Spurs game on TV at the weekend, and Neville and Carragher were consistently saying things like you expect that City can just flick a switch and things will be all right.
Yeah.
Or you expect them to go on this sort of winning run. And I'm just like, you haven't been paying attention, because that isn't happening this season. That's the sort of thing that happens to City when when the system is working. Yeah, they might get the odd bad result here and there, but the system is working and the setup is right. It just doesn't feel that way this season, and that's the problem. So you get to Villa at the weekend. It is perfectly plausible that City stick 4 past Villa at the weekend and win the game really comfortably. Yeah. Equally, it's perfectly plausible that Villa turn up at the Etihad, win 2-0, and everyone goes, weren't Villa good? Because like it just like the seesaw, you just don't know which way the seesaw is going to land at the moment, and that's down to City just not having any consistency. And all it needs is, it used to need the opposition to be nearly perfect to win the game, and I don't think you need that this season to beat City.
That's interesting. So it sounds a little bit like Haaland has maybe, his signing has sort of changed the system, and maybe City are going through a development process.
It is, yeah. I think exactly that. I think it's one of the things that I think, were it not Erling Haaland, you'd probably have a striker there now who is sitting on, I don't know, 8 goals, 9 goals, 10 goals for the season, and everyone would be going, God, he's not doing really well at City, is he? But because Haaland's broken the Golden Boot record for however many seasons already, you kind of like, it papers over the problems that City have of actually. Haaland has been brilliant. Everybody else has kind of had to change their role a little bit, and we've not quite worked out how to do it yet. And like, I've got full confidence that they will work it out. But I kind of feel like it's not going to click this season, and I think they kind of need. I liken it to that 1920 season and that 16-17 season. I think they just need a kind of a few months trying a few things, maybe getting a few things wrong here and there, but finding out what works and what doesn't work, and kind of how they want to play next season, and then we'll kind of take it from there.
Okay, well, one player I also have to ask you about, of course, is a player very close to the heart of many Villa fans, Jack Grealish. From what I can see, obviously he's been, I would argue his first season was quite inconsistent with City as he got used to playing there, which I think, to be honest, most people probably expected to happen.
Yeah.
But second season, it feels like in recent games that I've watched, and I watched the Spurs game at the weekend, he seemed like one of your better players. Am I right?
Yeah. Yeah, and Guardiola trusts him as well now, right. which is a big thing. So again, this idea. So City fans, a lot of City fans are complaining that they want to go back to what City did in especially 2017-18 and a little bit of 18-19. And that's get 2 wide players really, really wide and get pacing behind. And you've got Haaland now, so why not play? The traditional one was Sane on the left, Sterling on the right, and then Aguero through the middle. Mm-hmm. And if you've got Haaland effectively playing Aguero, then why not have 2 wide players who are going to get down the line and really kind of stretch the pitch at the top end? Guardiola hasn't gone for that at all. It's been since 2018, so 4.5 years that he just hasn't done that. Mm-hmm. And now his go-tos are Grealish on the left and Mahrez on the right, with the idea that they will both cut inside and keep the ball. He wants players that will control games and will know when they need to hold on to the ball and when they need to move it on. And actually, for what you'll remember Grealish being at Villa as someone who will pick up the ball and drive at opposition and be really exciting like that, doesn't really do that for City anymore, and he doesn't really that's not part of his game at all. Yeah. And it's interesting to see how he has developed into that sort of role. My image of Grealish when he's driving tends to be across the face of goal, across the face of the box now, and that's largely because every time he picks the ball up, he's got 2 or 3 men on him, and he's got 2 or 3 men to try and beat. And I mean, Spurs were quite happy to give him a good kick in, and most teams are quite happy to give him a good kick in. And you know, he takes it. I mean, as well as anybody taking a good kick in could take it, I guess. But like, I think there's an element of, I think City fans. I think there are some City fans who want to see more from him because they remember that Grealish at Villa used to do what he did for Villa and would steam through. And they also remember what Sterling did at City and what Sane did at City and real kind of get down the line and get decent balls into the box, arrive at the back post and score the tap-ins. And the truth is that isn't going to happen because City don't play like that anymore, and they haven't played like that for some time. The entire way City won titles in lockdown and the kind of 2021 and 22 titles was by controlling games. As I said before, they just strangled games. Grealish and Mahrez are the players that are doing that for them right now, and Guardiola likes that, so that's how it's going to be. Whether that's the right thing or the wrong thing, I think there's plenty of City fans who don't like watching City play that way. But Guardiola's everything comes back round to that control, and I think it's games like the Real Madrid game last season that really stung him for this, because the question of the Real Madrid game was City should never ever have been in a position where 2 late goals would knock them out of the tie. They were, and ultimately, they were still in full control of that tie until the 91st minute. They lost control of it for 2 minutes, conceded twice, and were out. And Guardiola's answer to what happens when you lose control for 2 minutes is you get knocked out. It's not, okay, well, let's have less control and more flair. It's let's have more control. And that's what Grealish is doing at the moment for City.
And I mean, I'm slightly fearful that because I don't really feel like Grealish has properly played against Villa yet. Actually, or the 3 games he's played whilst at City against Villa, I feel like he missed 2 of them, and I think I
can't remember last season. He missed the last day last season because I thought he was really unlucky to miss the last day.
Yeah, he did. Yeah,
because he played really well. He basically rescued City a point at West Ham the week before.
Volley, yeah.
So I thought that might have been enough to get him a start for the final game, or at least get him some time off the bench. But obviously, the way that game went, it was Guardiola going, "Oh well, I need to sort this mess out." And by the time he'd done it, he'd used all of his subs. So I felt sorry for him on that day. I don't remember if he played at Villa Park earlier in the season. I think he came on. He
came on briefly. Didn't really do. There were very memorable chants from the Villa fans of Villa till I die and all that.
Yeah, and then I think the year before, I think he came on as well because I think the year before I think we were winning 2-1, and he brought him on with it for like 10 minutes, and I was just like, why are you doing this? Why are you giving the Villa fans something to to boost the atmosphere? You want to kill this game? Don't chuck a match into the cinder box, for goodness sake.
Throw that grenade in. Well, David, how do you think Villa can hurt City this weekend? Where is it that you seem to think that City are most vulnerable at the moment?
Don't give away any easy chances. That's as simple as that right now. Because the way City are playing, if you're able to press them in not really high areas, because if you really step out and you start trying to press them in kind of like their own box and stuff, they will find a way to pass it around you and get in the space behind. You kind of want to kind of half press in that sense, and you want to press kind of more on the halfway line and sort of get around Rodri and stop him being able to find an out ball. Because he's had a little bit of a dip of form lately, and obviously he played the hospital pass into Lewis for Kane to score at the weekend. But if you can really smartly kind of cut out his passing avenues, and City don't really have a way through, you get an option to either nick the ball there and set up a counter-attack, or City play it too quickly and you can win the ball back and hit them on the transition. City are not great in the transitions at the moment. Right. So if I was Emery, I certainly wouldn't sit back and sit deep and go, right, okay, you have the ball, we'll try and hit you on the counter-attack. I think City are not really in a position where they're creating that much at the moment, and they're not really kind of being as there used to be a time when you'd watch City and you'd think, goodness me, every time they get the ball, it's a hot knife through butter. I haven't seen that for a while from City. I've not seen that. There's maybe been 1 or 2 times this season where they've done that, and more often than not, it's been a little bit of a case of we really have to work to create a chance. So don't give away anything stupid. Don't kind of like Wolves when they came to the Etihad a few weeks ago. Jose Sarr just passed it to Mahrez for him to square for Haaland. It's like, don't do that. Yeah. That's just a ridiculous way to get beaten. Because if you are compact and you are tidy and you are tight, and you are able to put City under a little bit of pressure in the midfield, you will cause them problems this season. I would expect City to still have something in the tank to be able to deal with that. They dealt with it when Brighton tried to do it earlier in the season. They dealt with it in the League Cup against Arsenal recently. But they're not comfortable games for City, those sorts of games. The games that are comfortable are the ones where the opposition sit back and just try and cut out space. And yeah, okay, it got Everton a point on New Year's Eve, New Year's Day, can't remember. But more often than not, it doesn't get a team a point because it took Everton a wonder goal to equalise. And more often than not, that finishes with a 1-0 City win and everyone comes out of the ground going, God, that was hard work, but they got the job done.
Yeah.
And if you, like Brentford, for instance, came and they didn't sit deep and tried to cut out the space. They put City under pressure in the midfield. Lo and behold, they scored twice on the transition and it worked. Fulham got themselves a penalty by... again, exploiting a transition, getting Cancelo sent off, and City not got lucky, but like they worked hard because they worked hard that game. But like, more often than not, they don't get that late winner. So it's just don't do anything stupid, basically.
Easier said than done. Well, it could be a big day in the middle for Boubacar Kamara and Douglas Luiz, former City man, of course, and Boubacar Kamara, who I guess outside of Villa fans, he's been absolutely sensational. He made a couple of mistakes. The first poor game for Villa really at the weekend against Leicester, but he's just been an absolutely sensational player for us so far. So I'd be interested to see how he gets on at City. And him and Douglas Luiz worked so well together away at Tottenham. So that'll be... I'm intrigued to see how they both get on against City and also how we potentially hit you kind of on the counter with a bit of pace in behind. And Leon Bailey, one of the world's most inconsistent players, but if he turns up on the day, you never quite know. He might do something. I mean, he scored against City at Villa Park. But, David, I've got to ask you, what's your prediction for this weekend?
I honestly don't know right now. It's a really hard one to call because I don't think, like I said, I don't think City are playing well, and I don't think if they turn up and they turn up and play well, it still could be a really difficult game for the way that they've the kind of the confidence that's in the squad at the moment. I mean, just touching on the fullbacks again. One of the ways Guardiola's been trying to get control of games is by having, it was Kyle Walker and João Cancelo earlier in the season. It's now Kyle Walker and Rico Lewis or Nathan Ake tucking in alongside Rodri and making a three in front of the two centre backs. And yeah, while that works in principle, the number of times it just kind of hasn't really given City the control that they need is starting to increase quite a lot. And yeah, I don't see any other way to kind of get into it. And I fully expect him to do that again. It could well mean that Rico Lewis is the 18-year-old kid who is a right back that's having to play left back because he's coming inside into midfield again. And that's a lot of responsibility to put on an 18-year-old's shoulders. So when you come to predict it, if Villa get a couple of turnovers in there, it could quite easily be a 2-0 Villa win. It could be a 2-1 Villa win. Equally, if City are able to control all of that and every player is on the game and they bounce back from the Spurs result, could easily be a 2-0 City win. So I don't know. My gut instinct says that City can't keep being as bad as they have been lately, and the funk has to turn around at some point. Yeah. And maybe with the news this week as well, that like the off the pitch stuff might spur them on a little bit more. I don't know, but equally, it could. It's one of those intangibles that could have the complete opposite effect. Yeah, the season just capitulates from here. So I don't know. I will say, in the interest of being and actually sounding like a City fan, because I appreciate what I've said over the last half an hour or so suggests that I might not actually be one, but I am. I will say, in the interest of that City normally have a good game, especially at home against Villa. So, notwithstanding the last day of last season where they really made hard work of it, we'll go for a 3-1 City win. Although, like, genuinely roll the dice and see what you get, because that could be your answer.
That's my exact prediction as well. 3-1, I think. But yeah, I'm very intrigued to just see how Villa do away at City. It's an interesting time at Villa, I think, for once, after what's been a very bleak year under Gerrard. But you mentioned it just there, and I have to ask you, of course, that today Manchester City were charged by the Premier League for breaking more than 100 of the league's financial rules. It's been reported the club could face sanctions like a points deduction or even relegation. Now, it's not really on fans to try to explain the whole situation, but are you able to give your kind of thoughts on the whole situation?
Yeah, it's and I appreciate this is going to win me no friends, either with City fans or with opposition fans. So I appreciate that whatever I say here now, I'm going to get grief. But I don't really care. I don't really care that much about what City have been alleged to have been doing, because they've ultimately, if they are guilty, what they have done is they have spent more money than they should have done, and they've spent more money than they should have done from rules that were introduced just after City were taken over to stop them spending more money than they should have done. And it's like Chelsea probably set the ball rolling with with Abramovich's takeover in 2004-ish. Can't really remember, but it was obvious where things were going at that point. And then City get taken over, and within a few years you've got rules about how much owners can put in the money. Fine, I don't City have signed up to the rules, so they've got to play by the rules. It's not like I don't say that as someone to exonerate what City have done. If they are guilty and they are found to be guilty, then yeah, chuck the book at them. I'm not really that you can't have a game that is governed by a set of laws and then just break them because you don't really agree with them. And because I don't agree with them doesn't mean that City should just be able to get away with it. I get that. But whatever the outcome is, if it's points deduction, fine. If it's relegation, fine. If they are found to have done it and they are red-handed and they've been and they're caught, then yeah, I'll still be a City fan, whatever happens, and I'll still do podcasts about City. I mean, I was joking before on Twitter, because my partner said my partner had tweeted an out of context quote of what I'd said. I'd said earlier, Blue Moon Podcast is bigger than Manchester City, and what I mean by that is, if it turns out that whatever the punishment comes in here, that City is wound up, you stop me making podcasts about this football club. This club doesn't need to exist for me to talk about them. So I will keep going, come what may. So even if it ends up City in the Championship or City end up in League Two and they've had to sell all the players, I'm still going to be there, because what a football club is its fans and its fan base and its supporters, and it's all my mates who I go to the game with. It's all of that. It's not who runs the club and kind of what mismanagement has been done here or there to end up with this situation. Now, don't get me wrong, if City are found guilty of all of this and they do face steep punishments, then I will be angry at them, and I'll be annoyed that I'll be annoyed both that they did it and that they got caught. I'm not going to lie. I think if you're going to cook the books, and this is something that we still have to find out if City have done. I'm being very, very legally careful here, not to prejudge the outcome.
There's allegations,
but if it's found that City have cooked the books, then I kind of think, well, do you know what I mean? I don't it's rich people doing rich people things that I'm not really kind of privy to. It doesn't affect my life in one way or the other. I'll still go to the football and I'll still kind of see my mates and stuff. So yeah, I do. I think it's. I would like opposition fans to kind of be aware of what City have done here as well, or alleged to have done, because whether City have paid Roberto Mancini too much money or more money than they said they were doing, I don't really think that impacts what happened on the pitch that much. Now, I get, again, that you have to play by the rules that have been set and you can't overspend and all that sort of stuff. But overpaying your players by having, things that go on behind the scenes, it's not fielding an extra man. It's not it's not cheating with drugs to make your players better. There are serious things you can do that impact games. I don't think that financially I don't think that declaring finances that you haven't earned or that have been pumped in by the owner is as massive a deal as it's a big deal, but it's not a kind of a game-changing deal in that sense. I think what it does is it kind of pisses off the fans of teams like Aston Villa, for instance, who have looked at the situation in the Premier League and gone, well, we've been playing by the rules and we ain't ever going to get to be title contenders because we ain't ever going to earn enough money to be able to do it. And the only way we can do it is by having a rich owner come in and pump a load of money in. And now we can't do that, but you decided you were going to do it anyway. I get that, and I get the anger from that. And that's why I think City should be punished if they are found guilty, because it's unfair on other teams who were in the same position City were in a few years ago.
Yeah, well, if you're relegated, you can go back to the glory days of the Gillingham player final.
Yeah. Well, this is it. I said earlier as well. I just hope that it's not to kind of League Two or League One, because I wrote a book about that Gillingham game in from what is now League One, and I was just like, the last thing I want is for my book about the only season in the third tier to no longer be about the only season in the third tier. It absolutely ruins me that if they stick them down there. But I don't know. It's like, we'll see what happens. I'm kind of que sera sera about it. Like, whatever will be, and I'll still support City, whether they've got Kevin De Bruyne or whether they've got Kevin, I don't know, Smith from Fallowfield up front, and the sort of working that out. I don't know. So I guess and like I say, I get that it sounds from opposition fans like I won't defend the club for breaching the rules if they have done that, and equally I won't. I don't really care that much if they have done it. You have done it, you face the punishment, then we kind of go on from there, see what happens. It's like football, the world will still go on, football will still carry on, and I'll still get annoyed about results. So,
well, if City are stripped of trophies and Villa get that Carabao Cup trophy, that final wheel, I tell you, I'll be straight up to Birmingham for the open top bus parade.
I do wonder. The one thing that would sour the taste is being stripped of trophies, because they're moments that we had as fans, and like I guess that's the kind of the would be the bitter pill to swallow. I guess would be the worst thing, but like the rest of it, just whatever happens. It is what it is. I can't control what they've spent, and if they've overspent, then it's on them to defend themselves. I won't do it for them.
Well, David, thank you very much for coming on to the podcast, and it's always brilliant to talk to you. You're very informed and just a good person to listen to about football and Manchester City.
I don't know. I can ramble.
Can't we all? I listen back to myself and I'm like, bloody hell, how long did I? What we're talking about? But so David, just before you go, can you just let us know where we can find you online?
Yeah, I'm unimaginative, so I'm at David Mooney on Twitter. I'm also at Blue Moon Podcast. If anybody cares about listening to a City podcast from a Villa point of view, then go and have a look at that. Just search Blue Moon Podcast, you'll find me somewhere.